my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
I am to misbehave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to another Geek News Roundtable Discussion. I am your host, Anna Mickelson, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And joining me, we actually did kind of have a full panel planned for this, but then we had some issues happen during that. But I am being joined by Rising Sun Reviews. Rising Sun, how are you this fair evening?
I am doing great because you promised to buy me Waffle House after this.
Oh God, you know what? Can you take me with you?
Sure, just stop on by.
I still haven't tried Waffle House because Waffle House does not exist where I live. Although,
and that's why my state is better.
Apparently so. Although I keep forgetting to mention this to you, and now I'm remembering to do so. I almost feel like a wish of yours came true because we just got a Jack in the Box opened like 5 minutes away from us.
I mean, last time I went to Jack in the Box, it wasn't that good, and apparently this is a fast food podcast now, which I'm completely okay with.
Yeah, there you go. Well, the thing that was really funny is, like, I'm a big Hardee's fan, and there was so Hardee's can't be Hardee's in the state of Utah. I don't know why. But they changed the name to Carl's Jr., and we had a Carl's Jr. really close, which is, like, my favorite place ever, and that closed down, and now it's been replaced by a Jack in the Box. And I just laugh at this concept because immediately I thought of you, where I can't remember. I think it was you and RPX that were giving us crap on a stream one night because, like, you've never had Jack in the Box, and then the conversation just devolved into, you've never had White Castle, you've never had Waffle House.
Okay, really should have had dinner before this podcast.
Yeah, no kidding. So tonight, actually, we are not talking about fast food. Sorry about that, guys.
Much.
But, yes, much. But tonight we are actually taking on a discussion topic that was brought on by you, the listeners. Because, not only have I been doing mini casts on a lot of the discussions that are going to be happening tonight, but on past podcasts, we have talked about a lot of the changes that are being discussed in the anime industry. And the biggest ones obviously being AI being incorporated into the anime industry and the implications of that. But before we delve too deep into this, I should point out a lot of the discussions that are being made with this is very similar to the AI debates that were had during the writer's strike and the SAG-AFTRA strike on basically how far can AI go before it actually, like, replaces jobs? How much can it properly be utilized, etc. So before we delve too much into this, I just want to really quick bounce Rising Sun over. And, you weren't on the podcast when we were talking about the writer's strike and stuff like that. How much did you follow a lot of that coverage?
Not that much. I saw some news articles and some of the YouTube channels I follow and other places would mention it, but I don't feel like I have a full understanding of everything going on.
Did you understand the complaints that they had towards artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I know that the actors did not want their likeness to be recreated with AI. Yes. I know that writers also did not want AI to be part of it for works associated with the unions. I don't know the details beyond that, though.
Well, some of the debates when it came to likeness was because there's been an ongoing debate in Hollywood. I don't know if you've heard of this, but they are actually going to do a movie. I believe it's a reboot of an old movie that starred James Dean, and they are going to basically resurrect James Dean. They're going to have a CG James Dean in that film, and Hollywood actors are having none of that because of the fact that, the film company owns the rights to James Dean's likeness, and
Right.
whether or not that actually is just kind of defaming his corpse. And that's just kind of extended into, because Hollywood is going to Hollywood, they were trying to look for ways to reduce costs. And one of the ways that they did reduce costs was like, okay, well, we don't have to hire writers full time. Oh, wait, we can have ChatGPT write scripts for us so that we don't have to hire writers.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of that debate came in. So it sounds to me like you've got a basic understanding on that, of like
Yeah.
how far can AI go?
Yeah,
Well,
and it's interesting. Like I've used ChatGPT a little bit. I just exploring it. I had an idea. Okay, can it write me a My Hero Demon Slayer crossover fan fiction? I was like, a random idea came to me. Could I do it? It was like very high level, very basic.
yes.
But it gave me a fan fiction like of those two series. It got the core ideas of it. Like it felt like something that could be part of it. Again, very simplistic.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, could that be like a starting point? And I see AI as like, I don't see it like completely replacing jobs, at least not often. But like as a
Depends on how
assistant,
smart the AI is.
well, yeah, I like my job. I like do a lot of writing for my job for like more engineering analysis. But could I get into AI like give me the first draft or help me find information or like they say like here's my draft, make it sound like I'm intelligent and like take it from there. So like it won't replace me.
Put that in my script. Make me sound intelligent.
Yeah, but could I do something like that and like get it a step further when it would take me like a long time to make my writing sound somewhat intelligent? And if it can do that for me, it's like, okay, I gave it the content, it makes it sound good. Could that be a way it's used?
Yes, and this has been a very big debate on it, because we have seen like we've seen AI being used in innocent ways. I mean, for crying out loud, the I don't know if you'd heard about this, but there was a South Park episode that actually addressed ChatGPT, and Trey Parker and Matt Stone actually did admit and gave a credit to ChatGPT because it technically wrote like a quarter of that script.
Yeah, it like wrote the ending of it, if I remember right.
Something to that extent. It was like the ending and maybe a couple of other lines in there, but they basically put the idea in there and then they ran with that idea and credited ChatGPT for that. And so a lot of people immediately assumed, oh, well, the script was 100% written by ChatGPT. Trey Parker didn't do shit. And so they had to go out and clarify it.
Yeah, and I saw the episode when it came out. Like, yeah, like the whole concept of the episode was about AI.
Yeah,
I did not like see all the news about it, but it seemed like they got to like the point, the climax, and then they're like, okay, ChatGPT, how should we end it? And then they like animated that.
Pretty much. The whole premise was basically the boys used, because obviously the girls they talk way too much, and so the boys would use ChatGPT to talk to the girls so that they didn't have to listen to them endlessly. So it was the dumbest thing ever. But ultimately, yeah, it did end with and I believe the ending line was ChatGPT written, which was like basically the way that they ended with the moral of the story speech. It was written by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the ways. The other ways that it's been affecting, I don't know if you've been following the voice actor scene too much, but there actually have been hacker-based AIs that have been able to 100% mimic voices of very well-known actors, both in the video game and the anime sphere. And so they've basically been using those likenesses illegally to be able to create their own. For example, the guy who played the Colonel in the Metal Gear games, they were using his voice to be able to create lines that the Colonel would have never said. And we're talking like hardcore shit, like, spouting off the N-word every fourth word kind of thing. And the complete premise of it was just to try and get these people in trouble.
Yeah, and it
sounds like them.
I know, like MatPat, the guy who does all the Theorist channels, like people made like AI voice of him, like saying ridiculous things, and I don't know the details, but yeah, like same stuff. Some of it was just like
Steve Bloombot that eventually, I believe, got silenced. Like they tracked the idiot down, but like it was making Steve Bloom say stupid shit, and of course this scared actors because, like, you know, everything that actors have to do is PR bait. Like, you know, I hate to say it this way, people give me shit for saying it, but this is what an actor does, is they are basically legal prostitutes. Their whole product, the whole thing they sell is themselves. And so at that point, if you are saying things that you know you didn't say, but it's very clear on audio that you said it, then obviously that's a problem, because that makes it so you can't do your job anymore.
Well, that's what my dad said about all jobs when I started working. It's a prostitute. You're selling your services to a company for money.
Yep, pretty much. I just remember that line because my voice coach told me that, and he's a prominent voice actor as well. And so he was like, yeah, no, I mean, here's the reality, is like, we're glorified whores, because all we do is we sell ourselves.
Exactly. And in a role like that, like, your name is really attached to your product.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your name and your voice, like, your voice is your voice.
Yes.
Well, like, if you're like me, more behind the scenes, like, if I do something really bad in the news, none of my customers are probably going to connect it to me, or at least very few would.
Yes. They wouldn't be able to connect it to you, but, like, let's just say you were James Earl Jones, then they would be able to connect it to you, because, you know, they know that voice. That voice has been in who knows how many prominent roles at that point, and so that would be damaging to you career wise. And in fact, that the other thing too that it has made it difficult for Hollywood is that now we have actors basically selling their likenesses and allowing for Disney to own their likeness, their voice, the characters that they played, etc. Like, did you ever hear of the James Earl Jones contract with Disney?
Oh, I know, like, they can recreate his voice and everything, and
Yes.
that's like part of the contract.
They 100% own his voice now. And so at that point, they can make him say whatever they want. And actually, like, a lot of people pointed out, the contract for it is, you know, it's like most contracts, it's fairly ambiguous. You could actually get James Earl Jones to say really horrible things, and then he's dead, and oh, look, his product is ruined. And the whole purpose of him making that contract was to basically set his family for life.
Yeah, and well, think about, like, say a new actor comes along, they really want to work in a movie, get their career started. They have no bargaining power. So, like, Disney comes in and like, sure, we'll give you a great deal. We'll get you in our movies. All you have to do is sign this contract to give us your likeness forever.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a lot of the scare that comes with the animation industry, is like, in the US, like, when you're dealing with Disney animation, this isn't necessarily a problem because there are US laws to be able to follow. But when it comes to anime, because of the fact you're dealing with two different countries, you're dealing with two different legalities and things like that, we're actually starting to have that shit happen, where people, especially like young aspiring want to be the next Steve Bloom, are getting conned into basically giving their voice over in some of these ambiguous contracts. Thankfully, there's no big examples. Like, a lot of these are very small time and kind of just ruined a starting career. But that's starting to happen because they talked to the wrong person, and that person basically manipulated them into being able to do their Tumblr fan fiction or whatever it was, but make them say horrific things that would pretty much guarantee that not only would they not work in the voice related industry, but anybody that can do a background check can know that your voice said that.
Yeah, and I do wonder if we'll get to a more point with, like, verification, where, like, it's not perfect, like, but Twitter verification, you can generally assume that people are who they say they are, at least if they fix the issues.
Yeah,
but
the issue that comes with that is that the way that I understand it, biometrics aren't necessarily where we need them to be able to do that, but they're getting there.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking, like, say you have a Twitter account that says it's you, it's been verified with your ID or whatever, you would know that anything posted on that account actually came from you, and anything else you could just say, well, that wasn't me, that was AI.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if there'll be, like, more verification whereas, like, if you can't specifically link it to a person through some verified source, you have to assume it's fake.
Well, that's the justification, is basically a lot of companies are basically saying we ought to have a biometric database. So that we are able to, like, confirm it's you, not just through, you know, through your vocal pattern, or being able to have, like, some kind of a way to be able to do a DNA match to you.
Yeah, so if I say something dumb tonight, that was LOAI doing it that Drak did to make me sound dumb. So you can't prove otherwise.
And it's good that you've messed around with it. But let's step back, and AI is part of it. But one of the things I want to address first off is kind of the reason why AI is being looked into to solve a lot of these problems, and that is what is happening with anime localizations, specifically what we would normally call isolated incidents, but are now starting to happen a lot more often. I know that, so originally Alex was going to be part of this because I knew for a fact he knew about this particular situation. Are you aware of the situation involving Ancient Magus Bride, or not? Oh, crap, which one is it? It's the
that's one of the things you sent me. So yes,
Kobayashi Dragon Maid. That's what it was. Dragon Maid, where Jamie Markey was in charge of the dub for that and decided to start interjecting basically feminist talk into the dub.
Yeah, I think I heard some stuff about that a long time ago, but I don't remember enough to comment on.
So basically this is one of those examples where basically actors or writers or localizers are basically trying to utilize the power that they have over these localizations in order to change the dub slightly so that it suits their goals politically, ideologically, whatever it can be. In the case of Magus Bride, in Dragon Maid, there was a scene where I guess on a random day, the main character, the Dragon Maid, came over to a girl's house with a sweater on, and they were wondering why that happened. And in the original subtitles, they were basically saying, oh, well, I kept on getting comments about how my boobs were hanging out, and so I decided to wear a sweater, and making a joke out of that like anime would. Well, Jamie Markey changed it in the dub so that instead she says, oh, I did it because of the Patreon. And let me see if I can actually dig up the actual dub, what she did. But it was basically, she was trying to interject political speak into escapist fiction, which obviously you can imagine did not go over so well, right?
Right.
And so, in fact, it's gone over so well that Jamie Markey still deals with the backlash of that and tries to justify it by basically saying, oh, well, I was doing dubs for numerous other companies and they were okay with it, even though we found out later she never approached any of the companies to ask for permission. She never approached she never got the permissions that she said she had in order to be able to mess with the dub like that.
Well, I'd also say it's like on the company then for like not doing a quality check.
Right, and unfortunately they didn't do it. Okay, here's an example of it. Let me see if I can enlarge the image so you can see it and then I can share it. But if not, I can also read it to you. So let's see. This should work. So here is the actual difference between the Funimation dub and the actual sub of Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. So the subs said, what's with that outfit? Everyone was always saying something to me, so I tried toning down the exposure. How is it? You should try changing your body next. That was the joke that was in the original sub of the show. The Funimation dub did this. What are you wearing that for? Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves, so I changed clothes. Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Yeah, so it's like completely changing the joke in that case.
Yes, in fact, and unfortunately in Jamie Markey's case, she has tons of examples of this, and the ones that she tries to justify are specifically in regards to, I can't remember what the full title of it is, but Panty and Stocking, the one that her and Monica Rial worked on. Oh
yeah, that one. That was fun.
Now, here's the thing. They changed that around because there was a lot of cultural things that needed to be changed around and reinterpreted. And the difference being is that even though they didn't approach the studio really didn't have a problem with it because.
Well, in that case, like the Japanese studio, like they told them like add as much profanity as you possibly can
Yes.
for this because it's funny.
Well, no, they actually did. They actually basically said there are going to be some things that you have to outright change, and that was, you know, obviously Marky and Rial did that. But when it came to the mangaka for Dragon Maid, as well as I can't remember who the TV company that owns Dragon Maid, somebody reached out to them for comment, and they went, "Wait, what?" And even though the dub has not been changed, from what we can tell internally, they were not happy with Funimation that they did that. And in fact, I believe I can't confirm this, but the premise is they didn't allow Marky to work on any other dubs that were done by this particular company. And so at that point, she basically lost a lot of money out of that, which understandable because she changed a bunch of things around and they heard of the cultural impact that happened with US anime fans and the fact they kind of lost money with.
Yeah, there definitely is a line like translating it like literally word for word oftentimes like feels very stilted and it doesn't quite make sense. And
Right.
especially like you want to like make sure the characters have their own distinct voice. That can also be like hard if you're just doing a direct translation. So it's a balancing act because you want to keep it as accurate as you can, but you still want to like make it sound good as a dub.
You do. And that's up to the localizer, and that's not an easy job. I'm not saying that it is easy. You know, like it's easy enough to make the argument of like just 100% translated over. That doesn't work that way. And
Yeah,
there are
like
a lot of localizers that love this job, that do it well, and that are now getting a bad rap because one or two people did a shitty job.
yeah. Well, a while back, there's a light novel that I wanted to read in English. It hadn't been translated, so I was like, okay, I'll figure this out myself. I'll try learning Japanese. That was harder than I thought, but that's another story.
Right.
But like just going through that, I was like reading what I had translated with the help of Google Translate a few years ago. I was like, okay, I see where they're getting for this, but this isn't quite right. So how do I make this flow well in the written form?
Right.
And audio would be even harder.
Exactly, because with writing, you just have it on words, and so all you have to worry about is punctuation. With voiceover, you have to worry about cadence, you have to worry about tone, you have to worry about the situation itself and what emotion is demanded.
And like matching the lip flaps too, because like
Right.
if you're like writing is like twice as long as before, okay, no big deal. If your dialogue takes twice as long, now you have a problem.
Right.
One eternity later.
Okay, so we are back. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, parental issues. But you know, we've given examples of where it was good, and obviously we brought up Panty and Stocking. The other one that I actually forgot to bring up with dubs where they do need to change in the way that we're talking about is Ghost Stories. Have you ever seen that anime?
Oh yes, it's on my like top anime list.
Yes,
Or it will be when that video comes out.
Ghost Stories was another one of those examples where it's originally I guess the subscript for it was horrible. And so they basically gave full permission when it got dubbed to just do whatever the hell you want with it. So there are definitely examples where it can be done right and you can completely go off kilter with what the story was originally intended. And then there are examples where you wreck the whole anime, not the whole anime, but you wreck that episode for people and you wreck the immersion for it, especially when, you know, you could probably relate to this, Rising Sun. You come home from a hard day at work, you're cracking open a beer or a soda or whatever you're drinking or eating, and the last thing that you want to have to deal with is the shit that you had to deal with during the day, like regular everyday politics in your anime. Now, I'm not saying that anime can't have politics. It totally can. You know, when it's within the universe, but when you're coming home and you want to go watch Dragon Maid, and then immediately, oh, it's because the patriarchy, and you're like, oh, come on.
Well, so you bring up Ghost Stories, but I feel like that's in some way going against that point.
No,
because
well,
like
Dragon Maid and Ghost Stories are bad examples because Ghost Stories is just they had to do what they had to do with it, and they had full permission to do it.
Yeah, so I think the permission is different, but like, yeah, Ghost Stories, they like lampoon religion, politics, and I won't say I was like offended by it, but like I'm a religious person, I take it seriously, so I was like off put by some of those comments.
No, Ghost Stories to me is like one of those perfect examples of like improv in localizing. And I've done acting for a portion of my life. And so I appreciate writing exercises that involve improv and being able to make a scene work with whatever little you have. So I have more of a professional respect for Ghost Stories, and I love in fact, one of these days I will introduce Andrea to it just to see her brain explode.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I think with
it would be good, right?
Yeah, and I do want to clarify my point. Like, yes, like Ghost Stories, like it does get into like politics, religion, all that.
Yes.
I feel like if that bothers you, maybe it's not an anime for you.
It's been a while since I've watched it. It was just jokes that like The Simpsons at the time, and so at that point, like that's totally fine. But it wasn't like going into, oh yeah, we have to stop racism and we have to stop all of this. Not like a lot of the stuff that's happening now is.
Yeah, it was more done like because they thought it was funny, not really to preach at you.
Right. And just because I want to be able to give as many bad examples, just kind of like hit these home. The other one that I gave you guys for research was the Lovely Complex situation that happened, where a YouTuber by the name of Jello Apocalypse came in and did a pro bono dub of an anime called Lovely Complex that specifically the dub director or the owner of Discotheque wanted to get. And so she basically contracted one of her voice actresses as well as this guy to go do it because she wanted it. And what she got was they basically changed a lot of the story because there's interactions between the lead female character and a trans coworker, and they basically tried to change it around so that it was much more sensitive, let's put it that way. And when approached on the matter, they basically just went full mask off and said, well, we just made it good because it sucked. I'm just going to ask you honestly, Rising Sun, we're talking about Ghost Stories. We're talking about Penny and Stocking isn't a good example because Rial and Marky take tons of credit for that. But do you think anybody who did the Ghostbuster or the Ghost Stories dub is like saying, well, we just made it better because the original thing sucked?
I mean, they did.
They did in essence say it, but not in the way that was being said by Jello Apocalypse.
Yeah, the difference with Ghost Stories, like the original creators knew it sucked. They were like, do whatever you want, and they loved the results.
Yes. And so at that point, like, it pissed obviously it pissed off those who were actually excited that Discotheque had gotten rights to do Lovely Complex. And it didn't end well for Jello Apocalypse because shortly after, Discotheque had to basically make a statement saying, yeah, we will no longer be working. Now, I know that some people will bounce back and say, well, they'll just hire him in secret. They can't do that. I know that people want to believe that, but unfortunately, we live in an era where anime fans, as well as fans of other kinds of media, can tell when you've hired them back, and they know how to raise every kind of stink. If you did actually hire somebody like Jello Apocalypse back, they'd find a way. It wouldn't work out well for you.
Though apparently, according to that article, there's an update that the changes did not make it to the final cut. I don't know to what degree that is because I know nothing about the show or the dub other than this.
Were not made to the final cut, which apparently are the more egregious ones. But from what I understand, it wasn't the whole dub that Jello Apocalypse had done. It was maybe like a couple of lines that were kept. The rest was trashed, and basically this guy added an extra bunch of work for that voice actress who got hired on to go fix his shit. So that is, again, not a good thing, especially if, like, obviously you're in your job, Rising Sun, but if you wanted to get into this industry, wouldn't you want to do like the best possible job you could do so that you could get hired again?
No, I would. What I would do is demand a ton of money from the first one, and then I take that money, do whatever I wanted, and then never work again.
Well, there you go. So basically, I don't know how many pro wrestling analogies you know, but you would basically take the Jim Cornette answer to that.
I mean, yes, I'm lazy. I don't want to work any more than I have to.
Well, his answer was basically all you have to do is, because he complained about how much wrestling talent got paid as opposed to him, because he was one of the writers, promoters, commentators, stuff like that. And so one of his active comments was basically, all you'd have to do to never have to hear me complain again is pay me what you're paying them for 1 year, and you get to go and I'm not trying to get in trouble, people, sodomize me with a goddamn fishing knife. After that year, you'd never see my ass again, is basically how the line would go.
Well, that's mental image. Thank you for that.
That's basically the same approach. It's like, oh, pay me the shit that you were going to pay them for 1 year, and then you'll never see me again.
Yeah, like I thought about that. Like, there's places I would not want to work.
Yes.
But I also feel like, I could do that for a year.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, especially like with pro wrestlers. I mean, right now they make a ton of money, and all you have to do is work for a year, and if people can invest that right, you never have to work again. You really don't.
Yeah, maybe I should go
the pro wrestlers do, just because they have knee injuries and shoulder injuries that they have to go pay for. But
yeah, like there's a company I know who's like, I can help you guys out a lot. Just pay me many figures of money, and then everyone will be happy.
Exactly. So obviously this has sparked a discussion with the Japanese companies strongly considering, instead of having to deal with localizers, because the localizers have because unfortunately in Japan's aspect is, if one person is doing it, we all are doing it. And therefore, in a lot of the cases of companies like Shueisha, they have to look at it and go, well, we can't make sure that you didn't hire that person to do our dub. So they instead are looking into the options of having AI just do the subbing for the localizers, which ultimately would mean, well, the localizers wouldn't be necessary anymore. At least that's the trending thought on it.
Well, for the sub, at least, dub would be another thing, but we already talked about that too. Yeah, so this is an interesting topic because, like, you want the subtitles to be good, and I feel like AI are taking a big risk for that because I feel like AI is good like 80% of the time, which maybe that's good enough, or maybe like I was talking about before, like, okay, it does the first draft, then have someone quality control it, and that can cut down on the time you spend on it.
At least my interpretation of AI is it is as intelligent as those who are programming it.
Well, not just that, but it's as intelligent as the data set that it's given.
Exactly. So it's as much information as you're willing to give it. And so it depends entirely upon who is programming it and the information that they are giving it. And so at that given moment, here's kind of my issue with it would ruin everything for localizers argument, because you would need to ultimately hire some of those localizers to program it, if that makes sense, because they would have to explain, okay, this is, this little contradiction in the English language doesn't match over to the Japanese language, kind of thing.
So I don't know if you would, though, if you gave it just enough data set of like, here's the Japanese, here's the English translation, just train on that.
Right. But basically what that would do, in my opinion, is that it wouldn't completely eliminate the localizer position, but it would severely cut off how many would need to be hired. And so at that point, perfect example here is Crunchyroll, because Crunchyroll has a ton of localizers. They don't pay enough and are more interested in having really awesome looking campuses than actually paying their localizers. You'd probably fire off about 75% of that staff in order to just give the necessary staff the time with the AI to be able to figure all of that out. And that's about as much as you actually would need. And I don't know if that would be, that still would be bad because those localizers would be out on the job.
Right.
But, it completely eliminate localizers. It just makes them very rare.
Yeah, it's a tool that you can do more work, like with a single person.
Right.
So again, that means, okay, you have a staff of, say, 20, now you only need 10.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the problem, is that's where I see that some of the stuff kind of starts. And even with, a lot of people have made this comparison that well, all they have to do is do the strike because the writer's strike got rid of all the AI. Actually, it didn't. If you go into the agreements there, basically all the production companies promise is that they wouldn't use AI as much, roughly. And so they still do use AI, but it's mostly the writers that are at that point. And so it's not like it's completely where writers are not necessary anymore. And the same thing could happen with the localizers. The localizers aren't necessarily needed anymore, except to update where data needs to be updated.
Well, and I don't know if localizers have a union or not, or
They don't.
any. Yeah, so it could be like, okay, we're firing half of you. We have our AI working. Tough luck to the rest of you. And maybe the others like could like form an informal union or say like, okay, we're going to quit because you did this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can't Crunchyroll's like a big studio. It's like, okay, we'll find other people who know Japanese. Anime fans are crazy. They'll learn Japanese if they really want to.
Yep. And like you were saying earlier, we are starting to see AI generated subtitles because Crunchyroll has already admitted like they're actually going to start using them in regards to their simulcasts, because the simulcasts can have those rough subtitle problems and then they can fix it later. Kind of thing. So they're starting to use it, and we haven't seen like a whole lot of localizers getting fired, but it is definitely something that might be concerning later on if they decide to use them more consistently for stuff that isn't getting simulcast. Because, obviously not every Japanese series is getting simulcast, right? So at that point, we might have that as a difficulty, but we also know, because of how the AI subtitles argument kind of started, they are also looking into the possibility of AI replacing voice actors.
So I did have a couple other things related to like the AI subtitles.
By all means, go ahead.
So I've noticed that like AI translation has gotten a lot better recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to send you a screenshot from what I think was an AI subtitled anime movie I saw a while back.
Oh, I totally agree with you. There's been stuff recently that I've seen too that has been actually pretty clean.
No, I like this is one of the bad ones. Like I
okay.
just found it.
I love bad dubs anyway, so please send it to me.
Yes, I need to see if I can like find the whole thing. But yeah, I like gave up watching because I can't make any sense of the story because the subtitles are so bad. And like I had mentioned,
which anime is this?
So this is Zegapane. It was a movie based on this. It's like a mech anime from like 2006. They did like some sort of movie tie-in to.
So they retroactively kind of did AI to dub it.
No, this was like AI that was back then, like Google Translate equivalent.
Okay, all right, yeah. So that would make sense. If it's Google AI equivalent, I asked you to cry who is living here. Yeah, that's Google.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, I was like trying to translate that light novel. It was like Google Translate. There's a couple of minutes like, I give up. I'm going this sentence through there. You get something back. I'm like,
I deal with that stuff too, because like we would have, I think you were even there a few times where we would be on stream and we'd have somebody speaking Portuguese, or I think we also had one that was German, that we were using Google Translate to talk to them, and even Google Translate was screwing up like live for us.
Yeah, like so I actually have some notes from when I used Google Translate like 3 or 4 years ago, and like it was better than I could do on my own, but it was still like very rough. And I like took that same sentence again today, and like it's 100% accurate now, or like it flows a lot better, which makes me think it's accurate, and like it got the intention. It is worded in a way that flows better. Mm-hmm. So like there's been a ton of progress in like the last 3 or 4 years.
There's been a ton of progress. So at that point, it can be a lot cleaner now. However, I have still seen, like, when it comes to the more complex languages, there still can be hiccups from time to time. Because I've seen it like when I've used Google Translate to translate something from like Al Jazeera, and Arabic is like the hardest language. In the world.
That would be.
There's still hiccups there, and that makes sense. And Japanese is, I think, the second one. And so there can be hiccups, but you can avoid them now. Like a lot of the AI is actually pretty damn good.
So I guess what would be your thoughts? Like, this is a light novel that does not have an English translation. If I use Google Translate to translate it, then like clean it up myself and like posted that online for free, mm-hmm. would you think that would be okay?
So I guess my first question is, so I'm not clear on this. You created it or somebody else did?
No, like I'm using Google Translate as the AI.
Yeah, so you're using Google Translate, but this is somebody else's work.
Yes.
That's where it gets murky, because at that point, like if it was just yours, then I'd say do whatever you want. Like I don't have an issue with it. But unfortunately, when you have another person involved, and granted, here's the one way that it saves you, is a lot of like music creators and art creators online basically put out blanket statements saying like, you can use this as long as you give me proper credit, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
So I guess the question would
Japanese
be,
creators will do that too.
so would it be any different than if I translated it by hand and did the same thing?
If you you use Google Translate versus actually translating it,
yeah,
I think there would be, because here's the issue with localizers, is that unfortunately every person is different, and when it comes to like the Japanese language, a lot of words can have different meanings, and different meanings can be taken from that. So I can definitely tell you that if it was Google Translate versus you, it would be different. Would it be wrong? That's where it gets murky.
yeah, and like I just like thought about that scenario tonight, and like, well, it's how much different is it than if I did it by hand? I don't know Japanese that well,
be able to truly say if it's wrong or not is for me to go and find a Japanese person, bring them in here, and say, "Read this. Is this accurate?"
Right.
And so at that point, like, is it worth going through all the hassle of that? No, not really, unfortunately.
Yeah. And is it worth like saying this is the best that's out there? Like, I know there's like the whole copyright things because I'm taking their original work. So yes, they could come after me, and like, hence why I do it for free. It's like, I'm not making money. I'll take this down if you want me to.
Right.
But from that regard, I'm like, I have something that's close to what it should be. I'm not going to say it's perfect,
Well, and here's
but
the
at
thing
least
too,
it's out there.
There would be mangaka out there that would probably just love the fact that their manga is getting some appreciation. And so obviously, unfortunately, when it comes to putting stuff out like this, it is a minefield in a way. But the difference that I would have with this versus like if you versus a hacker is you'd work with the freaking mangaka. You wouldn't care. Or if the guy basically said, "Yeah, I never wanted to bring this to the States. Could you please take it down?" You'd actually say, "Yeah, no, of course." And
Yeah, I mean,
go into a box somewhere and nobody would ever see it again.
yeah, I'd be doing it out of like passion for the series. I would like, I'm not doing it for personal gain. It's like,
Right.
hey, I really love this thing. I want to read the rest of it that hasn't been adapted.
Right.
And I know there are people like me. So, okay, I'll share what I do with other people.
And as a fan, I would be somebody that would appreciate that, because I don't know what this manga is, but if I was a fan of it, and there's a ton of like anime that I've never been able to finish because simply they got canceled. So at that point, the best example that I can give you is Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple. Now, that has an English manga, but unfortunately, the anime only got 2 seasons, and it actually went far longer than that. And so at that point, I've been struggling to be able to find those English written manga, because unfortunately it's out of print. This series is like early 2000s, so nobody makes it anymore. And that's been a pain in the ass, but I have actually been able to find pages online that have been fan translated, and when you compare them to the English dub, they're not off too bad. And so in a lot of cases, I've actually been using the fan translation to be able to see moments that I actually care about.
And it's like with like old video games too, like there's nowhere you can buy it legally. So it's like pirating it that wrong?
Yeah, and that's a gray area that I don't think video game companies will ever be able to truly address. Nintendo wants to try and make sure that nobody can pirate their games, but in reality, does it actually matter that they're pirating Super Nintendo Mario Kart? Like, you haven't done anything with that in decades.
Yeah, again, like lots of gray areas. It's an interesting way. Like, it's just a whole interesting topic. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely something that needs to be brought up. It's it's a discussion that I really wish a lot of companies would have, because in a lot of cases, like, does it really? Video games is a better example of this, in my opinion, than anime, because anime you don't have to deal with 4 to 15 different rights holders in those cases. Like usually with Japanese companies, unless I've got this wrong, is like there's the mangaka, there's the studio that published it, and then there's the publishing company for the US. You know, like there's 3 to 4 maybe entities that you have to deal with.
There's also the production committee, but that's like kind of folded in with the studio. Like,
yeah,
you'd probably be working with them more, but yeah, whoever the Japanese owners are.
Whereas some of the ROMs that are out there, these are games that were published because some, Japanese company rep saw this game in action at a convention and saw this guy was trying to earn some money and agreed with their vision. And unfortunately, because of this company getting bought by this company and this company buying this company and now we have like 15 to 20 different entities that now own this. And if you try to remake it, they want their piece of the pie. And so it basically becomes a financial quagmire in order to try and make that available on the Nintendo Switch eShop. So Nintendo basically says no, but that means that one guy who played it on the NES that loved that game, well, he's, as far as Japan is concerned, he's a pirate because he kept that one game that he knows he's not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, like I've done this with like old games that I like have sitting in my closet,
right,
that I like want to play on my computer. So like, well, I can't really get it on my computer from that, so I'll just find it certain places online.
Right. And at that point, like the moral gray area, as far as I'm concerned, is like, you're looking to play this game yourself for nostalgia purposes, right? You're not looking to make it available to everybody else. And
yeah,
that's where I don't have a problem.
Yeah, like if I tried to sell it or anything, obviously that would be wrong.
Right. If you basically tried to sell it and say, oh, well, I'm the guy who owns this, and then eventually they come out, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the guy who worked on this. That's where it becomes a problem. But a lot of people who emulate, a lot of people who pirate anime, because we're going to be talking a lot about this tonight, they aren't pirating it for the sake of redistributing it. They're pirating it because they want to go relive their childhood, their 20s, when they saw whatever series for the first time. Like, I mean, an example for me is I recently watched Initial D, which came out in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Initial D, Funimation only has the rights to like the first 4 seasons, and there's 6. So if you want to watch the rest, they don't have the rights to those, and you have to go through tons and tons of red tape just to find a pirated version of it. And technically, we're not supposed to be doing that, but, well, Funimation didn't bring the other 2 seasons over. So what am I going to do?
Especially when
learn an entirely different language? Come on, man.
Yeah, Japanese is hard. It makes my brain hurt.
It really does. And it's murky ground, and it really makes me wish that an actual discussion could be had where I don't want the whole world involved in this. Specifically, I just want US and Japanese reps to be there where we can all just kind of come to the agreement, like, we're not doing this to hurt you, Nintendo. We're not doing this to hurt you, Funimation. We're doing this because this is what we want to watch, and you've done jack shit for it. And this is actually going to be a big deal, because one of the other things we're going to be talking about is, well, Crunchyroll and Funimation merged, and it turns out that, oh yeah, everything was going to be made available on the platform. Turns out we have hundreds of titles that are now lost to the ether.
And doesn't Sony own those?
Well, a lot of people own them. That's the problem.
I thought Crunchyroll was owned by Sony, but maybe that, or no, they own Funimation.
Some of them are subsidiaries of Sony, and they just haven't realized it yet. That's the funny part. Is like there's like 2 or 3 anime in there that are technically owned by Sony still.
No, I meant like Sony. I meant like Sony owns Crunchyroll.
Yeah, Sony owns Crunchyroll, but then the rights to the animes were from companies that they had absorbed years ago, and they still have the rights to them. They just don't realize they have them. But then you also have, okay, for example, some of them are doing dub runs on High Dive. Some of them are doing dub runs on, what's the other big one?
Yeah, so
The
Sony and
Sentai one, the Sentai player and things like that. And it just, because of that, a lot of these titles are lost to the ether. And oh, by the way, hopefully you didn't buy them digitally.
yeah, because I know like a lot of those went away.
Oh yeah, they totally went away. And Crunchyroll, even though the CEO came out and basically said, "Oh, we'll try and work with you," to my knowledge, they haven't done anything to work with those.
Yeah, which is weird because like Sony owns like so much of anime. Like they own Aniplex, which is what owns Funimation and Crunchyroll. So they basically own nearly the entire U.S. anime industry.
They pretty much do at this point, yeah, because Funimation had so much of a corner of it, that now Sony pretty much owns that corner, and there's only a few companies left.
There's like
Sentai is still around, and I think Discotek is.
Yeah, there's like, well, like for streaming, you have High Dive, but they're pretty small. You have Amazon and Netflix, which bigger on their own, but for anime, not that much.
No, not at all. In fact, the only way to be able to keep things like High Dive running is they're going to eventually have to work out deals with Amazon, which, by the way, Sony also has those deals. So at that point, then they'd be screwing themselves because they'd be competing with, or they'd be attempting to compete with Sony, and it wouldn't. So it's
apparently AMC is who owns High Dive.
Oh, is it AMC that owns them?
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe they'd be able to pull it off. You know, they just got to put out another 10 different seasons of Walking Dead, and then they can do it.
Yeah, I feel like AMC is like they're struggling as a whole.
Oh, they are. Oh, they absolutely
are. They do own AMC also owns Sentai, so that's where that connection came from.
Okay, so they own. So you were saying they own High Dive, they own Sentai. Do they own Discotek?
Let's check Wikipedia.
I have no idea. Oh, and Viz is still around. So at that point, Viz would also play into this. Because I just barely saw today, Viz Media got the rights to a big anime too, and we're getting excited about it. And I can't remember what it is. Just saved my life. But that's okay. Yeah. I know what the article was.
Viz is owned by someone in Japan who I cannot pronounce.
Yeah. But they kind of like how Gen Fukunaga owned Funimation. So you have all of those.
Yeah, so it's one of the production companies though in Japan.
Mm-hmm. So for the sake of kind of moving things along, let's actually start kind of broaching this issue with actually securing the rights to voice acting when it comes to AI. So basically what Japanese companies specifically are experimenting with on this is they basically want to try and do what Disney did with James Earl Jones, where if they give you a very comfy sounding, very ambiguous contract, they want to be able to own the rights to your voice. And so then at that point, if they have a role that is just perfect for, just as an example, because I have to use names that everybody knows as opposed to me, they go to Scott McNeil. And Scott McNeil says, okay, you can own the rights to my voice and what my voice can do and everything like that.
So
and
is it bad that I don't know who he is?
Oh, okay, let me use a better example. Steve Bloom.
I know that guy.
Yeah, there you go. I thought everybody still knew Scott McNeil. I guess I'm not I guess I'm behind the times. Steve Bloom signs this contract and basically says, okay, you can, whatever role you think is a Steve Bloom role, you now have the rights to my voice and you can voice that character with my voice. Now, the way it's looking at the moment is that, Steve Bloom would be getting really good royalties with this. But it's because the reason that he would be getting really good royalties out of this is because Steve Bloom is Steve Bloom. Like, we all know who Steve Bloom is. And Steve Bloom also has enough savvy when it comes to legal contracts like this, where he can make it work for himself. Unfortunately, what Japanese companies would probably try to do is try to bring in Joe Schmo, who doesn't have a whole lot of voices to his name, who isn't that widely recognized, and do that to them. But because they're not widely recognized, that Japanese company can hold them over a barrel.
Right.
And that's where it becomes very difficult.
And they might not get the best voice acting, but if they can now distribute everything themselves across the world without the need of Funimation, well, maybe they don't need the best voice acting to be profitable.
Well, the reality is that what you can end up with is, this guy's not widely known. Why do we have to pay him royalties? Nobody knows who he is. We don't have to pay him royalties for anything. And so they can take stuff like that, or it's like royalties, residuals, all the stuff that, a lot of voice actors, they don't rely on, but it is nice income to be able to have. Joe Schmo wouldn't have that because he doesn't have that recognition, and he doesn't have that legal savvy to be able to do that.
And if he's just excited to be voice acting, or maybe even says like, yeah, we're going to put you in a bunch of anime, sign this contract, we'll give you a bunch of money, which a bunch for him, not a bunch for like Steve Bloom.
No. It would probably be more for Steve Bloom, but again, Steve would be legally savvy enough to be able to know his own worth and be able to say, nah, you got to pay me this amount. Whereas Joe Schmo only has like 4 roles to his name, doesn't have that clout, and thus cannot make those arguments.
And they come up and say like, we'll give you $100,000 to use your voice forever. And it's like, that's a lot of money for him. He might jump at it.
But the reality is he's probably not going to get 100,000 out of it. He might get.
Yeah, I think if he knew what he was doing, you'd have to offer him a lot. But again, a lot to him is a lot less than a lot for Steve Bloom.
You'd think so, but unfortunately, the scum of the earth tend to also be in these positions, and they try to do it for as little as possible. And whether or not people like this or not, there are scummy people in Hollywood. There are scummy people in the anime industry that will exploit you as best as they possibly can in order to pay as absolute. And that's where a lot of the concerns come up for a lot of people, is that what if you put the wrong person in charge and that person just exploits the hell out of people?
And they only need to get like one person to sign the contract. So if you are like smart, like, this isn't fair, it's like, okay, we'll go to someone else.
Right. And you basically make it so that voice actors, like if you want to be a voice actor, you have to have a lawyer on retainer. And I'm not saying that it's actually a good idea to have like a lawyer that you could talk to when it comes to contracts like this, but usually you don't have to worry about that until the big jobs start kind of rolling in. What this would basically make is you'd have to do it a lot earlier, whether or not you can actually afford it.
And if you're a voice actor just starting out, do you really have money to pay a good lawyer?
Exactly. Well, in some cases, do you even have money for food that month?
Exactly. Like, food is more important than lawyers.
That's the issue here. And so in a lot of cases, that's where I see a lot of people getting concerned with it. I will say one thing in this argument that is going to piss people off, because there is one tiny little thing that's getting avoided in this that I want to bring to your attention. When it comes to the AI dubbing and subbing and everything like that, there is actually talk that basically Japanese companies would no longer be working with publishing arms. And basically what I'm saying is they wouldn't be relying on Funimation for the publishing rights, for the distribution rights. They would instead, because things are getting cheaper now to be able to do it, start doing the distribution themselves. Which sounds like, no, not a great idea. And some of those Japanese companies, I can see why you'd say that. But one of the things I've always had a problem with the anime industry, maybe I'm the only one, is Funimation knew the kind of power they had over Japanese companies. Because, like, I didn't even know this until the merger was complete, but apparently Japanese animation companies hated Funimation. Did you know that?
Oh, no, but I can see why.
Let me bring people up to speed. Because when they were trying to set up the publishing rights and the distribution rights for anime, they had everything pretty uniform. Where you were the one who handled the merchandise, you were the one who handled the DVDs, you were the one who you handled all of that. Funimation pissed them off because they basically came in and played a la carte with it. So instead of getting this all-encompassing contract, they instead would say, okay, take this part out because we're going to do the dubbing on our own. Because we have this wonderful Okratron studio that we can do that with. take this merchandising out because we're not even going to worry about doing physical merchandise. Maybe cut this DVD deal in half because we're not really going to sell that many discs. And so Japanese companies hated them for all of the extra work that those contracts would require. And so at that point, I find it interesting that now Japanese companies, and I think this is actually a good idea, they're basically looking at it and saying, why can't we just do this ourselves? We have plenty of people that are working overseas that we can work with that would help us out and not hold us over a barrel like some of the publishing companies that we've worked with have in the past. Now, am I smoking crack for that?
So I think one thing to consider is that like Crunchyroll and Funimation, they are owned by Sony, which is oftentimes the same people who own the studios themselves.
Right.
So yes, it might be
So
simpler.
you don't have to
not
worry
need...
about that middleman there anyway.
Yeah, and so like so much of the Western anime stuff is owned by Sony, along with the anime itself. So I think in some cases there would be that, like if you're working with a third party or Funimation's like, well, we will license this, but only pay you for these things if it is a different company. But I also think a lot of times it's like not applicable at all because they already own everything through their parent companies. Right.
And so at that point, I'm kind of happy about that because I remember hearing like horror stories. I mean, the biggest example, Macross fans know this well, is like Harmony Gold are bastards when it comes to their stranglehold that they have on the Robotech license. And so at that point, like that's a good example of how Japanese companies can get screwed over by US companies when trying to distribute things over. Other examples can include, I remember hearing a lot of shit about, what's the Central Park Media, how they would do things. And so the Japanese companies would get screwed, which in turn, the Japanese companies looked at that and went, well, yeah, we don't want to deal with this overseas stuff. It's just too cumbersome. It's too expensive. If you want to enjoy our stuff, you better learn to speak Japanese, kind of thing. Whereas now, we're now having Japanese companies. I mean, I'm a Gundam fan, and this is the perfect example of it. Gundam was pretty much dead in the United States. I want to say like starting in 2014, 2015, it was very difficult to be able to get new series here. And all of the old series were basically, you had to go find a $700 copy of a DVD on eBay. But then Gundam decided to open a YouTube channel. And originally they were planning on doing like competitions or whatnot for it, because this was when Gunpla, their little mini model kits, were becoming popular. But they basically realized, oh shit, why don't we just put our series on here? And that way we don't have to pay anybody jack shit because we own the Gundam the Gundam license. So we can put up these episodes with the subtitles that they had for the DVDs anyway, and people can just have access to it. Because it's not like you're getting the rights to the original Gundams, or you're not getting residuals from the original Gundam series anymore from 1970.
Yeah, I guess the question would be like, what would be more profitable for them, putting it on YouTube themselves, or licensing it through Funimation where they like split the profits from it?
Well, they basically, I think there was only one Gundam series at that point that was owned by Funimation. It was Gundam Seed. And Gundam Seed is now one of those anime in the hundreds of titles that is now lost to the ether. Until what I'm guessing is going to happen is that the Sunrise themselves, or at this point, Bandai Namco, will basically authorize for Seed, if it isn't already there, to just be able to be played on the YouTube channel.
Yes, like they get the rights back, and then they can do what they want.
Right. But to my knowledge, they own it. So at that point, like, they are able to put those up, and they put them up in all types of localizations. Like, if you look at that channel, it has tons of playlists, and most of them are just like Mobile Suit Gundam, US dub, Mobile Suit Gundam, French dub, Mobile Suit Gundam, Japanese dub, Mobile Suit Gundam, Chinese dub. And so it's like amazingly long in their playlist, but it's just basically them putting up the series for anybody who wants it. Now, that does not include their most recent series. They still work through, I think it's Crunchyroll, because Crunchyroll had Iron-Blooded Orphans, and they got the rights to Witch from Mercury. And so, like, modern stuff, that goes through those necessary channels, right? But anything past like a 5-year or a 10-year mark, that's getting put on the channel's name is Gundam Info.
And it might be, in that case, they're like, okay, we'll sell these series to Crunchyroll forever, how long they do it, and like, we'll make good money there. The older series, like Crunchyroll might not pay that much for, so like, okay, we'll throw it up there ourselves, get people to watch it.
But here's the thing, because it's YouTube, they can get ads on them, and premium subscriptions still pay them for it, so they still get something. They still get like tiny residuals out of it because it's their product. But that's totally within legal means, you know? Like, they're not doing what any other creator isn't doing, like where they're putting up ads to be able to get some kind of AdSense out of it.
And especially for Gundam, because like it's such a big merchandise thing, making easy access to all the series, that will get people in the merch, and that's where they make their real money.
Yeah, the only thing that makes this complicated, but I don't even want to touch this because I don't even know how Gundam would handle it, is originally the merchandising rights were done through Right Stuff. But Right Stuff is now owned by Crunchyroll. So at that point, they are owned by Sony, and that's still very murky waters. So we're not even sure if Gunpla kits will be able to be sold here, or if you're gonna have to import them. Whether or not that's gonna matter, because like a lot of the importing for that stuff is now done through Amazon, so it's not horrible. So a lot of that stuff is murky, but this is kind of their answer. Well, funniest thing, Rising Sun, over the years, I've seen numerous older anime start to do the same thing. They start putting up their series on YouTube and just put up for example, like the way some people have been asking this, like, how are we watching Beyblade for Geek News Anime Night or Marathon Night? We are watching it on YouTube because Beyblade actually has a channel on YouTube, and they put up like all of the older seasons of Beyblade in various dubs. So that's how we're watching it. But
yeah, it is nice then.
But another example is, I don't know how many times I asked you how to be able to watch this. It was an old series called Hajime no Ippo that people had been recommending to me. Guess what? Hajime no Ippo has a YouTube channel, and you can watch Hajime no Ippo, at least the Funimation dub that was being put out there. Those seasons are available on that channel. So stuff is becoming available, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. One of my biggest complaints with Japan is that they have been very isolationist in the past when it comes to their media.
Well, especially older media too, because like I feel like the newer stuff, Crunchyroll, or I feel like 90% of the new anime you can stream through legal means if you want.
You can,
but it's like,
here's the thing: they don't like it, but you can.
Yeah, and like they get some money from it. They've worked it out. It's might not be the ideal, but they get their money from it. Older stuff, like when the license expires, then maybe they don't want to renew it. It's not worth it. So it just like falls into the ether where you have to stream it illegally, you have to torrent it, which that can be a mess if you're not used to it.
But some of those companies are now just kind of looking at it and going, well, we really aren't doing anything with it. So, I mean, if somebody wants to pirate it, you know, what are we going to do? Like,
or put it on
money out of it.
Or put it on YouTube, get some ad revenue. You make more money than if someone pirates it.
That's basically their answer to piracy. Is like, okay, well, we can't make this work here. Let's put this on where basically it's public access television. People can view it, and we still get ad revenue from it. So it doesn't really hurt either way. And if there's still a series that isn't getting that kind of revenue, they just kind of ignore it at this point because there's nothing they can do.
So I just thought of something. What if a big studio like that, instead of distributing it through Crunchyroll or whatever, put it behind a YouTube channel that you have to have a membership to watch the new episodes of?
They could. They could put it into members only mode, and that would suck. But right now, I don't think they understand how that works, because I don't honestly think YouTube completely understands how that works just yet. So maybe it's good that nobody's figured it out, but it is definitely something we have to consider in the future.
Yeah, I could see that being in the future. It's like, okay, we'll put a couple episodes for free. Want to watch the rest of us? Get a subscription to our channel.
Right. And this is somewhat concerning because, you know, we also do have some older TV shows that were made here or were made by U.S. studios that are starting to have that, but it's only covering like the most recent stuff. So it's like all the stuff that we would expect would be highly restricted from this. the best example that I can give is Power Rangers. So Power Rangers has an official YouTube channel as well, because they don't have the Netflix deal anymore. They decided to put up all the old seasons on that YouTube channel, except the ones that are specifically tied to Netflix via their rights at this point.
Which, that's fair, I guess.
Yeah, because those are the ones they can't mess around with. So at that point, if you want to go watch the original Green Ranger saga, because we all miss we all miss Jason David Frank, you can go do that. They don't have a problem with it. So that, I mean, that's ultimately what I'm saying is I like the fact that we're now being more and more open. I wish there were some other discussions, especially in regards to piracy, that were happening, but we're starting to see that gate open.
Yeah, and I also so it's weird, with the streaming services, if it's split among 10 different services, that's annoying. But you also want there to be competition so they have motivation to do a good job.
Uh-huh. But also what this encourages is how many times have people like Team 4-Star said it? Support the source material. And this allows you to directly support them, and they can then look at that and go, oh, these guys really like this Dragon Ball or this One Piece series. Let's give them what they want, because obviously that's money in our pocket. And so it allows for not having all of these red tape and hoops for the fan to get to the company. If it's a Japanese company, they now are starting to have that direct interaction. And to me, that's golden, because as a fan of anime, for as long as I've been around, that has never existed. I mean, for crying out loud, the fact that we now have game creators, Japanese game directors, doing tours of cons that they never would have done 10, 15 years ago, that already speaks volumes to me, because I actually could meet Hironobu Sakaguchi before he passes away, heaven forbid. And so that door is starting to open, and we are able to show our support to the creators that we love. And we don't have to go through medium A and B. In the case that we're talking about, we don't have to go through Jamie Markey if we don't like her dub. We can just go support the direct mangaka of Kobayashi Dragon Maid.
So what's interesting, you're mentioning how more anime on YouTube is good.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I originally started watching anime 15 years ago. I'd be like, oh, okay, Bleach or whatever, Bleach episode 5, part 1.
Because
and it would just be there.
Waters. You couldn't necessarily handle it. Yeah, I watched a lot of Bleach that way too.
Yeah, it's that's how it was, because the Japanese were not policing it as much. That's changed a lot now.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're oh, this thing from 10 years ago that people are using, let's use that ourselves.
Exactly. And they're utilizing it, and they're getting money out of it, which ultimately, what is the motivator for any business? Money. That's always been the problem. And in some cases, when they've had to use US publishers, they've lost more money than they've gained. And so this actually allows them to kind of go from a zero state and be able to see, oh, we made Metabots who knows how long ago. Let's put it up on YouTube and just see how well it does. And then you can check the viewpoints and you can get the ad revenue from it. Holy shit.
Yeah, and there's no cost to putting something on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
For new anime, I could see why they wouldn't, because they would lose the streaming revenue.
And it wouldn't work that way for newer anime.
Or if they could be okay, you guys really like this new show anime, okay, have the first four episodes for free on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
get into the YouTube algorithm, get it recommended to people, that builds your audience.
The only thing that makes me sad about this is that YouTube has basically made, and I'm not saying they're completely useless yet, but it's taken services like Retro Crush and kind of made them not necessary. But I still want Retro Crush to exist. Okay, don't take this the wrong way, people. I love the fact that Retro Crush exists, because there's just, it's great and all that you're able to put up Digimon, but there is old OVAs that are never going to see the light of day, because there's no way YouTube would ever allow them, because YouTube is fucking YouTube. All right. So for those who are wanting MD Geist, it's never coming to YouTube. Sorry.
I can see why. So
no,
not a perfect solution.
Absolutely. So Retro Crush is one of those medium midway solutions that I like exists, because the way that they basically earn their revenue is by paying for the servers so that people can watch. They like Retro Crush, I believe it earns a little bit of a profit, but not a lot. So I still want to be able to see services like that exist, but only in the sense of stuff that it's just never going to pass the censors at YouTube.
Right. And is that a legal site or is it a pirate site?
Retro Crush is an official site. They actually have apps on smart TVs and stuff like that. So you can access stuff there. In fact, one of the things I love is that, a lot of my favorite OVAs from back in the day were like OVA adaptations of old school fighting games.
Oh, cool.
So like if you want to see Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, Retro Crush has it. I believe they only have the Japanese dub of it right now though. But the big one is like if you were a fan of the Fatal Fury movies, nobody has it but Retro Crush right now, and they thankfully have it in English dub. So if you want to hear Terry Bogard in all of his cheesy glory, that's where you got to watch it. And I'm okay with that because Fatal Fury, even though we're having a revival, probably never gonna see those on the mainstream services. I'm just saying they are 80s levels of cheesy. I don't see anybody wanting to bring those back.
Which, yeah, some things just aren't coming back, but that's okay. We can still enjoy them.
But that's why I think Retro Crush and services like that are essential, because then at that point they can get the light of day. They just get it in a different way. So that being said, so we pretty much covered a lot of the major discussions and arguments when it comes to this, which I think we're basically just in agreement. Like, we want this to be able to benefit the people who are involved. We don't want, basically scumbags coming in and exploiting people when it comes to the use of AI and stuff like that. So I think that's exactly where a lot of people want to be able to be with this. But let's think realistically. Like, we're talking about what we want optimistically. Realistically, do we see a lot of these practices being adopted in like the next 5 years?
I feel like more will be adopted. I feel like it'll be like a slow adoption, and they'll try to like see like what can we do to like add a little bit without much outrage.
Right.
Like for like the post processing for like audio work. Well, what if you use AI for that? That's not the audio itself. What if you realize, oh wait, that's the wrong line? Can we use AI to recreate just that one line or like change one word? Is that okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, like, will they do something slow like that?
It's definitely going to be a slow process, and it's going to be in a way where they can try to get away with it without as much backlash as possible. Which I'm just going to say to the people who are worried about that, you're going to have to stay vigilant, and you're going to have to continue to make those complaints, because the companies are going to try and get things past you because they want to be able to get this stuff out in as efficient a way as possible. So if you don't want like ideologies or politics being brought into it, I don't want them either, but you can't rest on your laurels. You've got to continue to hold these companies' feet to the fire.
So another thought there. So like with the AI voice acting, guess you can completely replace a voice actor, but what if you just do the AI and the post-processing of it? There's a term for that, I forget what it is, but in order to like, okay, we only need a couple takes, we'll like fix it in post.
In post-production, you mean?
Yeah, so if you do that in post-production, well, now you only need, say, 2 takes instead of 5, you cut your recording time in half, now you only need to pay them for half the amount of days.
And that's stuff that has to be considered.
Yeah, so
like a lot of what you're bringing up, it to me is just like legally murky territory, and especially when it comes to pay disputes, because voice actors have to work for every dollar they want to own, and that doesn't just mean in the recording booth. That means making sure that payroll for Funimation or for the Japanese company aren't trying to shortchange you in that regard. Like I remember hearing from my vocals coach, because he worked on I'm not sure, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get him in trouble, but he worked for Nintendo. Let's put it this way. He did some vocals work for Nintendo, and
he's the voice of Mario.
He is not. Not quite. Well, no, he's not Mario. but I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
But he has done a lot of work for them, or specifically a company that is owned by Nintendo, and that company loves him. And so at that point, like, he loves working with them, but when it comes to like his pay, he's had to do some disputes with the payroll of that company, not the directors, because they really do try to say, oh, well, you were only here for like an hour and 48 minutes. So you technically weren't here for 2 hours. Let's try and cut like $100 out of that kind of thing. And so he still has to like, he has to fight tooth and nail to make sure that he is fully compensated. And that is something that actors will always have to deal with. And even if there's AI agreements, you're still going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, like, how do you enforce it?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of this is just basically how do you enforce it? And frankly, we don't know, because AI is still murky territory, and a lot of people, probably us included, we're not sure how much we want government to be involved in the anime industry or in voice acting or any of this stuff, because it could easily become worse.
Yes, like, do you trust the government to have competent regulations for that?
I don't trust the government to wipe my ass. So, I mean, at that point, like, that's the problem. I mean, do you want to know the one time of the year voice actors hate? Tax season. They really do.
Yeah.
They really do. Especially if you're an independent contractor, which, spoiler alert, most voice actors are.
Yeah, so they don't have taxes taken out. They're like probably not making a ton of money, so they're not setting it aside, and so they do not like April 15th.
There's a joke that basically, if you're a 1099 or an independent contractor, you have to know the tax code in and out. You don't have to, but you have to know a lot. You have to know what you can justify as business expenses, as other kinds of expenses, and so taxes can get really complicated. And for voice actors, this is none too different, because you have to incorporate, okay, studio expenses, business expenses. Did I have to write this ad? Or did I have to write this particular script line? Did I go to a coffee shop to do that? Can I justify my coffee as a business expense? Etc. It gets ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever be my own business. That sounds like too much work.
Well, I mean, I've done it. I've done it, and I will tell you, I love what I do, Rising Sun, but when it comes to that time of the year, I could live without it. I try to make that sound as best as I can, but there are things that in any job you're not going to like doing. And for some of those, that's scrubbing toilets, and for others, it's doing taxes. And that's just the nature of the beast that you have to deal with, or the other thing that voice actors have to deal with a lot. And I'm just curious if you've ever heard of this, just following the various voice actors that you have. I dealt with this, and it's bullshit, where people would go out of their way to try to not pay you under the premise that, well, they're just giving you exposure.
No, but I can definitely see that being an issue in like lots of places.
It happens a lot. And I'm not faulting business owners for doing this, because a lot of companies that I specifically worked for were mom and pop shops. They already had way more on their plate than anybody actually understands. And so when they were trying to scrimp and save and make sure that they had that extra $100, I totally understood it. But I also had to be the asshole and say, like, well, I'm doing that too for my kids.
Yeah.
And
like, there's not much money to go around, so I can understand both sides.
But you have no idea how many college students get exploited in that regard, because they may not know. And unfortunately, I ain't helping them, because they need to learn. This is actually one of those lessons that I do honestly believe, if you're going to get into this profession, you need to learn yourself. Because if you don't learn it, then how much, this is going to sound mean, but like, how much do you truly value yourself?
Well, it's like
you have
any
to value
employment,
yourself really well in that regard.
It's any employment too. Businesses will pay you as little as they can get away with. If you're young, you're not used to the industry.
Yep.
You don't know what you're worth. They're going to pay you hardly anything.
Perfect example. People know that I work as an Amazon driver. Recently, I actually said on a stream that, or not on a stream, but on a podcast that I had been, my pay had been upgraded by Amazon. I'm not going to give you details, but here are the specifics. The pay increase that I got, about 15% of it was Amazon. The rest was my boss paying out of pocket because he valued his employees that much.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that was a thing that could happen.
No, I'm pretty sure he got flack for doing it. I'm pretty sure he did, but Amazon, like, they did not provide a lot of that pay increase. But he did because he understood, like, what his drivers were doing. And, I'm talking a boss who has, like, he was already the CEO of a successful company, and this was a side deal for him, and he wanted to be able to make it work. And he knew, like, he's a very business savvy guy. He knows what he has to do to be able to motivate his workers. So at that point, like, he knew the shit that he needed to do.
And like, if you pay your employees well, take care of them, they'll take care of you, and then you'll take care of your customers, and they'll take care of the profits.
And that's ultimately what he wanted to do, was because he wanted to be like, I know that a lot of people say, like, when you hear in your business, like, we're all like a family. Look, there are a lot of people that will tote that line as bullshit, and there are actually business people who do believe it. And when you come across one of those CEOs or COOs or managers, you do everything in your power to stay with those people because they genuinely do.
Yeah, like, my manager is awesome in that regard. Like, he's probably the best manager I've ever had. So I love working with him.
This guy is a golden opportunity as far as I'm concerned. And immediately, as soon as I heard that, because I've worked for shitty managers, I've worked for people who just try to scrimp and save and try to screw their employees because they already know for a fact you're not going to be there that long. And so when I saw that this guy did that stuff, oh shit, did I do everything in my power to make sure that he knew that I appreciated it. Because I'd rather work for a guy like him than work for, 10 other guys that are going to basically look at me as nothing more than a piece of meat. And that's, unfortunately, that is all too common right now. I mean, look at the gaming industry.
Yeah, and because of that, you're going to make him lots of money, so he's going to be happy.
Or I'll be a valuable asset to his company. And that's ultimately, like, I can't remember if you're actually in a management position, but you probably understand this philosophy. When you're hiring people, the main premise of why you're hiring people onto your team is to take as much of your workload and put it onto them so that you have less work to worry about as a manager. And that's what this guy did. Is he basically said, okay, I think you're trustworthy. I'm going to give you this workload, and I'm going to treat you effing well in order to make sure that you do this and you do it the way that I need it done. And that's how he earned loyalty with this company. So, but yeah, like, that's, I can't even remember how we got here at this point, but yeah, we were talking about this. Like, we want to make sure that these, like, a lot of voice actors, a lot of localizers, they're not getting exploited, because that can easily happen.
Yeah, especially in an industry you're passionate about, you're up for exploitation. Like, you're a driver. I don't think you're that passionate about it. You do it because it's a job, but you don't have that passion to be exploited and not pay you much.
Yeah, no, my passion is what I do aside from that job. But I still love that job because it grounds me. Because, like, unfortunately, people can get into creative professions like this and kind of lose their head a little bit. And that job allows for me to not do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
It basically is kind of a nice break where I can start working on problems mentally. And because I'm doing all the physical activity, like, my brain can just kind of work. And then I can start coming up with ideas. So, but yeah, like, so ultimately I do like the job. Don't get me wrong. I love the job, but I love it because it does that for me.
And, like, if you did not need money, you would not be working that job. You just do, like, your other stuff full time.
I do I do my passions full time, but I might, like, I might not necessarily work for that company, but I might still do, like, delivering packages or whatever, or some menial task for my own enjoyment, kind of thing, just to get myself out of the house. Because unfortunately, like, with voice acting and whatnot, guys, I spent a lot of time is spent in a hot office. So I'd probably do something like go for a run, but that would just be to have a change of pace.
Yeah, but still, it's like you spend most of your time doing your hobbies, not the job you currently like work full time, I'm assuming.
Right. Right. And so that's how that ultimately works out. And I think we've actually just like we've hit the nail on the head here. Is like we don't want people to be exploited. We kind of want a lot of this other bullshit to stop. And for more importantly, people like Jamie Markey to realize that, we love this. We love this a lot. I'm sure she does too. But do you really need to put your agendas in there when you know it's going to upset people?
Yes, like create a good product we can all enjoy.
Right. And so at that point, I think that's actually a good point to wrap this podcast up on. And thank you so much, Rising Sun, for joining me on this one, because I have a feeling Rising Sun is going to be the Iron Man as far as I'm concerned, because I didn't go over it in this podcast too much, but because I'm not allowed to say too much, but unfortunately, Alex had a bit of an accident. And so I know that he's going to be recovering for a little while. And Brinton is actually getting ready for surgery. And so I'm just saying, like, we appreciate Rising Sun because you're probably going to be hearing a lot from him, which is actually kind of cool because there are some things that have happened over the last couple of months. I kind of want his unique opinion on him, just saying. But Rising Sun, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to be able to learn more about you, how can they do that?
Oh, they can do so on YouTube, where I post approximately one video a year. You can do so on Twitter, which I do delete from time to time. You can follow me on Archive of Our Own, where I post weird stories, and no, I will not tell you what my username is there.
Okay. You can also follow all the bizarre adventures on my channel when I'm actually able to get them properly, as Rising Sun requested, AI animated.
Yes, you can. If you want stories, you can get those there. If you phone me on Discord, you can tell Drak to give you my Discord information.
Okay, cool. All right, I will freely give that out to any hacker that basically asks for it. No, I won't.
Yeah, sure, why not?
You like having fun.
I also have a Discord server, which I sometimes use to post thoughts about weird anime.
Which I do actually appreciate from time to time, just because it's random discussions that can happen from time to time. Also, if you guys would like to be able to hear more from Rising Sun on specific stuff, let us know in the comments below. Let us join in on this conversation in the comments below. Let us know what you guys think. Do you think that Jamie Markey's completely absolved of any wrongdoing or whatever? Do you think that Japanese companies should just continue to have to deal with publishers? Let us know. We like to have that conversation. Feel free to leave a like on this video if you liked it, and also consider subscribing to the channel because I like continuing to tell YouTube that people like my content, whether they like it or not.
Yeah. Also, tell in the comments what fast food restaurant I should go for dinner tonight.
Absolutely do that. Absolutely do that. And that'll go ahead and do it for us. So next time, we will be actually being joined by Rising Sun again as as the GNRO podcast. I still need to put March in the books. And frankly, a lot of shit happened. So at that point, it's going to be really fun to get Rising Sun's opinions on things like Gamergate 2.0. I'm sorry.
I'm busy.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm going to be busy in March.
Well, I mean, it isn't March anymore, so I guess you're screwed anyway.
I was busy in March.
Yes, you were very busy in March. So we will see you guys then for that. And also, MMO fans, you can also rejoice because we will also be back with more information because the War Within Alpha launched. And there's lots of information to glean from that. But until then, for myself and for Rising Sun, we will see you guys next time.